Well, hello C3. It is great to see you all here today. And I just want to say a special shout out to those of you that are joining us online. It is absolutely, you can get a bit more excited about that. Those of us that are joining us online, it is an incredible privilege to be able to speak to you today. So wherever you are, if you're in the auditorium or if you're at home with a cup of tea, we just want to say welcome to you. It is great to see you all here today. We are going to do some baptisms today, in case you hadn't noticed, as Josh had said. And we are really excited about baptisms. Some of you will be really familiar with what it means to get baptized. Others of you are probably really quite uncomfortable right now and thinking, what on earth is going on? What has my friend invited me to? What has my family member invited me to? So if you'll allow me, I just want to spend a few moments unpacking a little bit about what on earth is this all about. And hopefully by the end of it, you'll understand what it is that these people after me who are going to come up on the stage and share some of their stories are talking about, what this all means to them. And if you're sitting there and, like me, you vaguely can remember your baptism from many, many years ago, and you feel like, well, I know what that's all about. Do you know I've been challenged afresh as I've been studying this, that it is always good to come back to some foundational truths. It's always good to remind ourselves of some of the things that started us on our journey and some of the key moments in our lives. So I'm believing that whether you've never been in church until today, whether you've never heard of baptism, you don't understand what's going on, or whether you're an old hat and you've been to hundreds of baptismal services, I'm believing that God will speak to you. I'm believing that he'll remind you of some things, or perhaps reveal some things for the first time to you. So what is baptism? Well, one of the things you always get taught at school is if you're struggling to define something, define what it isn't. And I want to start by saying a few things to you today that baptism is not. Okay? Because there's a few things that people think baptism is. First of all, this water is normal water. It's out of a tap. Okay? It's not spooky water. It's not been prayed over. It's just normal water. Okay? When I was little, I used to think that it was like full of sins of people. When I was about sort of 4 or 5, somebody dropped a dummy in there, and their dad picked it up and put it straight back in, and I was horrified because I was like, Mum, she's eating sins. Like, I didn't understand it at all, but it is not anything special. It's just water out of our tap, okay? So it's not that. The other thing that it's not is it's not a way that we gain forgiveness, okay? Coming into this water, because it's just bog standard water, it's not a way of you being forgiven for the things that you've done in your life. That is not what baptism is. The other thing that baptism will not do for you, which often people think it will do for you, is get you into heaven. Baptism is not a way of getting you sure into heaven when you die. That's not what baptism does. And the reason why baptism doesn't do that is the third thing, that being baptized does not make you a Christian. Okay? If you get baptized today, it does not make you a Christian. It's none of those things. So the question is, what on earth is it? What is baptism? Well, it's a really simple statement, and I just want to unpack it a little bit more for you today. But baptism, we believe, is this. It's a public declaration of a personal decision. A public declaration of a personal decision. And I just want to unlock and unpack those two aspects, the personal decision and the public declaration. You see, the thing that you notice about baptisms and you'll hear is that everybody comes up and shares their story. And each and everybody's story is completely different. You'll find that some people have been born in maybe a different country from you, different parenting, different family setup, different circumstances, different situations that they've encountered, all completely different. And that's one of the things that I love. Because I'm inherently nosy, I love a good story. I like to, oh gosh, can't believe that happened in your life. Oh, how did you get through? I love that kind of thing. Okay, I love a good story. I cry at everything. I cry at Frozen. I've watched Frozen about 767 times because my daughter's obsessed with it, and I still cry at the end when she turns to ice and then a hug freezes her. I'm still crying at it. I cry at everything. So baptism's a nightmare for me because I never stop crying. But everybody's story is totally unique, and you'll hear that today. But one thing that always strikes me is no matter how diverse the stories are, there's a moment that is across the board the same for people. Because there's a moment when each person comes to a point where they have to make a decision. They have to make a personal decision. Stories are different. The way that they got there is different. But at some point, and you'll hear it today, now you're listening for it, they've all had to make a decision. And that decision is what they're going to do with truth. Because they've been confronted with a truth, and they've got to decide what to do with that truth. And the thing is about truth is when we're confronted with something that somebody says is true, and up until that point we've not believed it to be true, we have to make a decision. Truth is not an overexpressed opinion. It's not an imposing point of view. Truth is more than that. And so when we come into contact with truth, we have to make a decision. And it's a simple decision. It's a decision where we either accept the truth or we reject the truth. It's not an easy decision, but it is a simple decision. We come into contact with truth and we accept it or we reject it. If we reject it, our lives can go on exactly as they are. But if we accept it, we realize that things have to change. Because something that we previously didn't think was true, we're finding out now is true. And things change. Do you know when scientists finally decided that not all the planets spun around the Earth and actually the Earth spun around the sun, that changed a few things in the scientific community. And there was a lot of reticence and a lot of resistance, I believe, often because actually those that didn't want to believe it didn't want their worldview to be changed. They couldn't imagine what their life was going to be like and what they stood for if everything they previously thought to be true shifted. And often that's what happens when we come in contact with truth, church, is that actually it demands a response from us, but the easiest thing to do is to reject the truth. Sometimes it's tricky to accept it because we know that we can't accept the truth without it impacting us. And today, you're going to see some people share their stories, and you'll hear that their personal decision is all to do with what's happened when they've been confronted with the truth. And that truth, I believe, is twofold. Firstly, the truth that they've confronted with is the truth about themselves. The truth about themselves. You see, there gets to a point sometimes in our lives when we stop and we look at ourselves and we realize, this is not where I thought I would be. This is not who I thought I would be. We look at where we are when we see actually some dreams that have been broken. We see some baggage that we're carrying around with us. We see some hurt that's taken lodge in our hearts. We're disappointed in who we've become. Maybe we carry shame around. Maybe we carry guilt, disappointment. Perhaps we realize that not only have we been hurt by people, but we've hurt other people. And that we've done things that we wish we hadn't done. And yet there's something within us that if we're honest deep down, we realize there is more to life than this. That there is more within us. And I believe that that is when we begin to be confronted with the truth of who we really are. Because the Bible puts it like this. The Bible says that he's put eternity within our hearts. But man cannot fathom it. We can't understand it. We can't understand it. And the Bible also says in Romans 3:23 that all of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. What does that mean? It means that at some point we realize all of us have not made the mark. All of us have done things that we're ashamed of. All of us have made decisions that have taken us away from God. And God's standard, the glory of God, that's his standard, it's his perfection. It's beautiful, it's complete, it's whole, it's healthy. And yet sometimes we look at our lives and we're confronted with that truth that our lives aren't what we wish they would be. And deep down we know there's more within us because we start asking questions like, what is this all about? I must be made for more. There must be more to life than this. And I think that more of us have been confronted with that truth than are sitting in this room today, than are watching online, They never had interest in church, because I think sometimes we're confronted with that truth and we try and answer that truth with things like drugs or alcohol or relationships or work or children or money, and we try and answer that truth to fill that hole. But the truth is, that's only the first truth that you're confronted with. Because the people that you'll see today have been confronted with the truth about themselves. But the second truth that they've been confronted about is the truth about Jesus. Because it's only when we're confronted with the truth about Jesus that the truth about ourselves suddenly starts to make more sense. Because the truth is that right into our brokenness, right into that time when we're feeling just, what is it all about? Jesus has already stepped down. He came from heaven. God took on flesh, stepped into humanity, walked a walk that was blameless, that was spotless, died on a cross. And when he hung on that cross, he took the guilt, he took the shame, he took everything upon him that we have been carrying around. He took the brokenness, he took the disappointment, he took the failed dreams, he took everything that we've tried to do to fill that emptiness. He took it upon him, because the Bible says the wages, the consequences of sin, of things that get in the way between us and God, is death. And so he took that consequence. He died on that cross so that you and I don't have to die on that cross. But here's the thing, the truth about Jesus is he didn't stay on that cross. He didn't just take the sin away. He rose again. He rose again. And do you know what that means, church? It means this. It means not only is our sin dealt with, not only is the shame that we carry around, we don't have to carry around with, it means that death has no sting, that death doesn't get the final say in our lives. And that means that we have a hope and a future. That is the truth about Jesus. And that is what we are standing up here today saying, I've been there. I've been in those moments when I've thought, God, what is my life is not what it was, not what I thought it would be. There's got to be more. But you see, if you've only got that one truth and you don't have the truth about Jesus, it just makes you miserable. It just makes you unsatisfied. It just makes you feeling like there's more, but I just don't know what it is. And yet, when the truth about Jesus comes into your life, that is the game changer. That's the thing that makes all the difference. And so the foundation of baptism is a personal decision. The foundational concept of baptism is all about a personal decision. If there isn't that personal decision there, then these people are doing a really weird thing of taking a bath in front of hundreds of people, fully clothed, with people they may or may not know. I mean, that's just a bizarre thing to do. But actually, when there's a personal decision, it's so much more than that. So it's a personal decision, but I tell you, baptism is a public declaration of that personal decision. A public declaration of it. There's something that is so good about just standing up and saying what you stand for, saying who you are, saying where you've been, saying what Jesus has done for you, and saying where you're going. And the Bible places a great emphasis on baptism. Do you know Jesus himself was baptized? Jesus didn't need to get baptized because of a personal decision, because he was Jesus. He didn't need to make a personal decision to follow himself. He was himself. Okay, so he didn't need to do that. The rest of us did, but Jesus didn't. But what he did need to do was a public declaration. And when we read about Jesus' baptism, we read that it actually started his public ministry. That actually it was a key moment in his journey on earth to be baptized. It was the start of the 3 years before he ended up on the cross. It was a public declaration, if you like, of saying, actually, here I am. I've been in the shadows, but I'm coming out now. See, we were never meant to live our lives in the shadows. There's a difference between a personal decision and a private decision. And it's supposed to be a personal decision between you and God, but it was never meant to be kept private. Jesus, as the ultimate example, decided to get baptized. And for me, that's enough. I follow Jesus. If he did it and tells me to do it, I should get on and do it. There's really no excuse not to get baptized if you follow Jesus. But that's the thing. Not so subtle hint there. But do you know, the other thing that we read about our stories, about this public declaration, is in Revelation chapter 12. And I've always loved this verse, because it says that the enemy, that can be the devil, Satan, whatever name you choose to call him, the enemy was trying to attack the people of God, and it says in here, they overcame by the blood of the Lamb, which is Jesus on the cross, and Jesus rising again, the blood of the Lamb, and the power of their testimony. Your testimony, your story is so powerful. So powerful. We underestimate our story. And today you will hear some stories that I believe will impact you. They always impact me. And the reason why they impact me is because, do you know there's a verse in John chapter 10, verse 10 that says, the thief, the enemy, Satan, the devil, comes to steal, kill, and destroy. There is no good in him. He is only here to accuse you, to make you feel guilty, to make you feel shame, to destroy your life. But Jesus says, I have come to bring life and bring life to the full. And one of the ways that I find I can endure is because of my testimony, because of my story. So when I'm having a good day, that's great. But when I'm having a day when doubts set in, when the enemy would seek to remind me of my unworthiness, when he'd seek to confront me with truth in a way that is accusatory and not grace-filled, when he would seek to sort of tell me, who do you think you are? Your past is rubbish. You can't stand there. You can't say this. How can you have faith for that? Look at what you've done. Look at this. When all of that goes into my head, I can come back to my story and I can say, no, no, no. Because by the blood of the Lamb, and the power of what Jesus has already done in me, I know that you are just telling me lies. I know that that is not truth. I've been confronted with the truth of Jesus, and it's changed my life. So you can leave me alone, and I'm going to keep on going. And do you know the power of today, of hearing other people's stories, is this. If there's something in my life that I've not been through, I guarantee I probably know someone who's been through it. I guarantee that I've probably heard a story that has actually challenged me. And so if I can't say my story, I can use your story. And I can say, but I've got a friend who's been through something like this, and I will get through this with God. I've got a story that is not just my story, it's our story that we can join together with. Okay, so that is what baptism is about. It's about sharing our story publicly. For the people that are getting baptized today, it might be the first time they've publicly shared their personal decision. Okay, so we're really going to honor them as they share that. But it's about Jesus and being confronted with the truth and the decision that they made. And today you've got a decision. You've been confronted with the truth of Jesus. What are you going to do? Are you going to accept or are you going to reject?